Well, of course, the continuing resolution was clean, leaving Biden's supplemental package with money to Ukraine in limbo. An issue talked about from the walls of Congress to the ski slopes in Davos, Switzerland this past week, where European leaders made the case of Russian imperialism without more aid from America. I spoke with the president of Poland, Andrzej Duda, who has been increasing his country's spending on defense in hopes of stopping Russia's wrath. Can you give us the status of the war on Ukraine, on Poland? What is the impact?
Przede wszystkim zacznijmy od tego, że
First of all, let me start with saying that myself and Volodymyr Zelensky absolutely agree on this picture, the picture of the reborn Russian imperialism that we are dealing with right now. So this attack of Russia against Ukraine, which happened on the 24th of February, 2 years ago, was the reborn Russia's imperialism. If it is not stopped, if it is not defeated, then it will devour also other countries. That is why Russia has to be stopped.
You have also announced plans to spend more than 4% of Poland's gross domestic product on defense next year, this year as well, amid these security concerns, $33 billion. Tell us how that money will be allocated and why you increased it.
Already last year, we spent 4% of our GDP on defense by doing huge purchases. Especially, we are buying military equipment from the United States. We have been able to purchase state-of-the-art Abrams tanks from the United States. So already the first items of those tanks have arrived in Poland. We have also been buying the Patriot system from the United States. This is the cutting-edge three-layer. We are developing a cutting-edge three-layered air and missile defense system in our country, and Patriot defenses constitute an first and most important element in that system. Apart from that, we are in the process of purchasing F-35 fifth-generation fighter jets, also from the United States. That decision was taken by President Donald Trump. We are doing that thanks to his decision. But there are also a lot of other procurements that are ongoing, that are in the pipeline.
So what is the consequence of no more U.S. aid to Ukraine?
The U.S. has got the most powerful armed forces in the world, and it is our biggest ally, of course, within NATO. So Ukraine does need this support. It provides the biggest support to Ukraine, and without this support, this help from the United States is also the only hope we can say for Ukraine to prevail. Because without that help, I'm afraid that Russia will not be defeated. Whenever there was a big war in Europe, whether it was the First World War or the Second World War, at the end of the day, the U.S. soldiers had to go to that war. And the U.S. soldiers were also dying, fighting in Europe and fighting in other fronts across the globe. In the end of the day, the United States won in those wars. However, that was at a horrible cost to American families. Now, if Russia wins this war, it will attack another country, and that would mean that there is a risk of another big war breaking out in Europe once again. So only the U.S. can help and prevent such a war from breaking out by providing support to Ukraine.
You have been at odds with Prime Minister Tusk. Tusk's new administration trying to get rid of people associated with the previous Nationalist Law and Justice Party government, trying to take control of the media, public media, roll back the changes to the justice system that set off a multi-year conflict with Brussels. Mr. President, how will you deal with Tusk in the middle of all of this?
I belong to the conservative wing of the Polish political stage. I'm a conservative politician. Now, the government, recently elected one, as I said, in the October elections, has got this liberal left profile. So it is quite obvious that we differ in our approaches to politics, and we also differ in our views. But right from the start, I stressed that I'm open to talk, I'm open to discuss, and I just fulfill my role as President of Poland. It's been my 9th year in the office, so I'm just doing what belongs to me. The new government has already violated the provisions of the Polish law and the Constitution by trying to introduce changes in the public media, for example, well, that court also passed a decision and confirmed that those changes happened actually with a violation of the Polish law. So I called right from the beginning to stop it. And now what the new coalition is trying to do, they are trying to remove the national public prosecutor in Poland. That is also happening with a violation of the law and with a violation of the Constitution.
Let me turn to the United States and the alliance between Poland and the U.S. Your thoughts on the upcoming U.S. election? We could be headed to another President Biden, President Trump rematch. Your reaction?
Przede wszystkim wybór należy do...
First of all, I want to say that the election of the U.S. president belongs to the U.S. voters, and I believe it is at least inappropriate for any European politician to tell the U.S. people what kind of president they should choose, because the choice is up to them. They know which president is going to be best for them and which president is going to best serve the country and the nation.
But you know President Trump as well. Do you see a further alliance or partnership in some way should President Trump return to the White House?
It is in our interest to have a very close alliance between Poland and the United States. It is also in our interest to forge a very strong Euro-Atlantic bond. I believe this lies in the interest of Poland, Europe, but also in the interest of the United States. And that is the fundamental issue for me. Indeed, during the presidency of Donald Trump, Poland had very good relations with the United States. I personally had a very good relations with President Donald Trump. I was happy to receive him in Poland. He got involved in many different initiatives, also the 3 Cs initiative in this cooperation. He got engaged in that. During the presidency of Donald Trump, we also signed a number of very important contracts between Poland and the United States, including the contract for LNG supplies from the United States to Poland. We also launched very serious discussions on constructing in Poland the very first nuclear power plant. So all of that forged very close economic ties also between our 2 countries.
My thanks to President Andrzej Duda for joining me from Davos, Switzerland.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.